Hello. It has been a while since I've done a Bible study stream like this. I've called it so far the hands-on Bible study live streams, where essentially I open a passage like I would normally and just go ahead and study it. And I use that using my Logos Bible software along with my note-taking software, MyNote here. Right now I'm preparing a study on John 7:53 through to 8:11. Now, I really wanted to bring this to you because this is a very interesting situation that I've not dealt with doing thorough study, at least not quite yet. And it's a situation where we have a passage that is widely accepted to be out of place, to say the least. A passage that does not belong in the book of John and possibly the Bible as a whole. So studying this situation has proven to be quite interesting. Now, I'll just say now, I am going on the assumption, since I've been told this for a long time, and this is something that my study and my knowledge of the Bible has shown me, that this passage does not belong in John, and is likely not a, I don't know if legitimate's the right word, but it should not be treated like a normal Bible passage because of its questionable origin. So we're going to go. I've already done some preliminary research. You can see my outline for my Bible study. I've already talked about the context and a couple of the different reasons why it's not a part of John. Might as well just review that for you right now. First of all, a lot of early sources, early manuscripts that are handwritten down exclude this passage. Of course, later on, this is eventually added, but even once it's added, a lot of the scribes, the people who are copying this passage, they would say, what do we do with this passage? It's kind of obvious, especially when many of them were speaking the original languages. This does not belong. So some people would move it to areas of Luke. They try moving it to other areas of John. And that definitely shows that throughout history there have been questions considering this passage. Another thing is the language is a little bit out of place. Like I mentioned, it is kind of obvious to a lot of Greek readers, but even to English readers, just when I took a second look at this passage, I'm like, this doesn't sound like John at all. There are phrases here, even in English, that I've never heard John use before. So it really seems out of character. And last but not least, another major reason that this just does not work, at least in its context, is the events are out of place. Just how it flows, and we'll go into that, how it flows from verse 52 in chapter 7, where you have the Pharisees discussing Nicodemus and ridiculing him, and then we all of a sudden go to this chapter 8. There's a bit of a transition, and as you can see, and I was about to write this down myself, where it says they each went to his own house. The English translators early on who put in the verse numbers thought this was a good transitional phrase, and they included it at the end of the last chapter. But we here include it all together because, again, this is all one section, and this section does not belong. So those are kind of that's the basic idea of why this does not fit. This passage just doesn't work. Now, can we learn something from it? Well, let's take a look. Is it going to actually teach a lesson? And if it does teach a lesson, is it something we should trust? If its validity as a Bible passage, as a Bible story is in question, should we use it for teaching and learning? Again, let's take a look. So first, like always, this is how I do my Bible studies. I like to do it verse by verse, go through each verse. Sometimes I'll combine them, but go through each verse and write down a couple points on each verse and maybe a question or two. So first, you can see the note I just mentioned. This is included in chapter 8, at least in my translation. I know some translations leave it where it was. I can tell you the King James, I think, almost completely ignores any special treatment um, concerning this situation. Yeah, concerning the situation, because while, as I mentioned, this passage has long been in question among early Christian fathers and leaders and scholars, only recently have we seen the focused turn on this passage, and only modern translations tend to make a note of its unusual origins. So now let's take a look at the first one. It says, they each went to his own house. Now, a question brought up by a new commentary I got here. Let's see if I can find it. This commentary is incredibly useful. If you ever get a chance to pick it up, it's just full of information and thought. I'm not sure if I can find it, but I'll convey the gist. Is really, who is this referring to? Who are we? Who is going to each their own house? Is it referring to all the people in Jerusalem, at the temple, during all the temple conversations of the last passage? Or is it referring to the disciples or Jesus? So it's kind of an interesting way to lead into this, because it does make sense. As I guess we haven't talked about that in a while since I've done this stream, but at the beginning of chapter 7, Jesus travels from Galilee to Jerusalem for the festival of booths. And for that festival, he does travel. So it does kind of make sense to mention, everyone, they headed home to their own towns, their own house. But at the same time, in the context, it doesn't make sense. Especially since it's very likely that the rest of chapter 8 and beyond still occurs at the temple in Jerusalem. So it brings some things into question. So let's figure out what can we say about this verse. Honestly, it is kind of a simple context verse that just transitions us into this story here. The indications here could be that they're separating, but Jesus, he chooses to go to the Mount of Olives to recoup and to pray. I think altogether it brings some interesting question. And let me see if I can get anything to load. I think I remember why I stopped doing these streams. Because having logos and my stream program run at the same time is a tad bit arduous. I might have to pull it up on my iPad if this takes all day. Let me see. Come on. We're almost there. I just have to... Okay, the first question is the Pharisees. Okay, so yeah, how this is set up, and it's a very thorough passage in this commentary, is it's more of an exposition dealing with the different questions and the challenges of looking at this passage, and not exactly verse by verse from what I understand. So let's actually take a look at something interesting. So they each went to his own house. I'm curious, and I might do this a couple times, again, to draw comparisons to show that this is unlike John's normal setup. So what I'm going to do is, if I can just copy that, so I'm going to search this now. Oh boy, I'm sorry if this stream ends up being looking at loading screens all day. And nothing but this verse appears. So now let's take a look. Come on. Yeah, there we go. That should be loading in. So where are the Gospels? Let's take a look at the other Gospels and let's search those and see if this occurs. I'm curious. There we go. Yes, this appears to just be unique to this situation, so I'm not going to really draw any conclusions on this. I'm just curious, plugging these in and seeing what happens. Honestly, I think I will just talk about these verses together, because again, this is kind of a minor verse here, but it is worth mentioning that it is kind of odd saying that they each went to their own house when there's not really anything mentioned before to who these they truly are. Oh, great. Now it's started from the beginning over there. So let's go write that down. Well, first, actually, I'm going to combine these two so I can just talk about these verses together. Something that I do often enough. Oh, boy. So looking at Mac Beach Balls, the movie. No, it's the wrong thing. There we go. Using my mind map, and oh, come on. Why isn't it working? Hold up. I can do this. I remember how to do this now. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. So I like to combine them so they're in the same node, especially if the verses are interconnected like this. This is basically the same sentence, so I'm just going to go with this. I'll just say verse 53. Honestly, I don't think there's really much to be said about verse 53. They each went to their own house. That is interesting. Again, let me just check this. I'm trying to find what this counter had to say on that. And you know what? I hate to take this off the screen. I'm just going to quickly look at my phone where things aren't freezing. I'll just quote it to y'all. How's that sound? Okay, yeah, that is much smoother on my phone. Whoop, wait, there. So I can just scroll like that. That is how it should perform on the computer, but it doesn't. Actually, I might need to just close some of these windows. You know what? Let's try it. I hate to do it, but I'm going to just close some of these. So I don't need all these Bibles open at once, honestly. I can just look at the text comparison tool. Meh. Come on. There we go. Then honestly, these commentaries, at least at the moment, aren't providing too much information. I'm sorry that this is just going to be a lot of loading. Okay, let me just check this. Addition dollar. Okay, difficulty involves circumstances. The answers of Christ. The history. Just trying to speed read through this, which is not my skill. I'm trying to find the point where it mentions it, the most dubious point. Tempting. Yeah, there is a lot of information there. I have a feeling it might be in another commentary, but honestly, It does not matter that much. I think the important thing to get out of both these verses is the second part, where it says Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. So I'm curious about this. Let's take a look at the Mount of Olives and figure out what point in his ministry does Jesus visit this. Wait, no, wrong thing. Or no, not search. Yeah, search. Mount of Olives. Gotta wait for this to populate. Oh boy, I'm lagging now. Meanwhile, while that's loading, how are you? It has been an interesting week, honestly. Weather's been very nice around here. I cannot believe that this is still loading. Honestly, a lot has changed since the last time I've done a stream like this. Last time this happened, let's just say the world looked very different. Ah, finally! Mount of Olives. Place. Okay, let's search it. That'll probably take another 10 minutes. Come on. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at all the instances of the Mount of Olives. And according to the commentary, but I'd like to at least take a quick look at this myself and just verify this. The Mount of Olives is usually a figure in Jesus' ministry. He visits it only at the end of his ministry. So let's see. Matthew 21:1 says, "Now when they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage," I've never heard that name before, "to the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent 2 disciples." So it's first mentioned again. That's triumphal entry, so that is later in his ministry. This one literally says, "Signs of the end of the age." He sat on the Mount of Olives. Disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be?" This is... yeah, that's later. Jesus foretells Peter's denial. Again, that is near the end of his ministry. And we see recurrences here, triumphal entry, mention the Mount of Olives. Drawing near. Already. Whole multitude of his disciples. Wait, what's this? He sent 2 disciples. So this I'm curious about. So let's see what this passage... I'm not familiar with this situation, so let me just take a quick look. Even though nothing will be quick, because all this software is killing my computer right now. Oh, okay, it opens a second window. That's just great. Let me close my interlinear window. Go into the village in front of... oh, it seems like it's right before... yeah, right before the triumphal entry. Okay, that's what the story... so this is all the so all of these occur after the triumphal entry. And let's take a look. It looks like in John, of course, it's mentioned in the verse we are studying. But let's see if there's any other instances, or is that it? Come on. Come on, work with me here, Logos. I'm going to close this. Maybe that'll help. Come on. Yep, looks like that is it. Looks like John has even mentioned the Mount of Olives at all, which is interesting. So not just is the Mount of Olives is only a feature later in Jesus' ministry, but also John doesn't mention it at all and does not consider to be a very doesn't consider it to be a very important factor. But let me just verify that real quick. Let's see if I can check one of my dictionaries, see what if it has anything to say about John in the Mount of Olives. Even though honestly that might be unnecessary because my computer is already okay. Where is here we go, that's a good one. So now let's just search the Mount of Olives, which as soon as I'm done here, I'm totally having a ton of olives. This is making me hungry for olives now. And while that is loading, oh, there we go. Improvement. Okay, we're searching. Where is it? No result. What? Okay. Let's calm down. Maybe I'll just get rid of the place tag and see if it fits now. There we... What? It includes the word of. Okay. Search all text. Forgetting how to adjust this. Paragraph, article. Oh, do you know what? I think... Do you do quotations? I do it. Let's see. There we go. That's better. History. Mark, Luke, Acts. No, that's Andrew. There's no way there is no... Hold on. Here we go. Mount of Olives. I was doing that all wrong. As long as I forget the difference between the search bar and, I don't know, whatever you call that bar there, the viewing bar or something. So let's see. As much as I'd love to learn about the mountain, that is not why we're here. Let's see if they mention anything about John and the Mount of Olives. Here we go. Jesus instructs them to go in the village. Okay, John 12, 1 through 13 is roughly parallel to the story in the synoptic accounts of the triumphal entry, which features Bethany, but the Mount of Olives is not explicitly mentioned. So that is correct. It is not something that John highlights. That is very interesting. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make a note of that. Let's just copy that. First, I find that quite an interesting fact. And then selection. Loading again. I should probably include like a counter each time I see a beach ball. Let's copy that. And now we go to our script here. So let's see. The mention of the Mount of Olives. Olives is out of place here. So far, there's two things. So, A, it's out of place because it's not mentioned and it is not a part of Jesus' ministry until near his death, so his last visit to Jerusalem. Let's see. So yeah, it's not featured outside Jesus's visit Jerusalem right before his death. And then let's see. The second thing we mentioned is John never brings up the Mount of Olives outside of this passage. Now that's a minor thing, but it is worth mentioning. Doesn't highlight the Mount passage. So let's add some supporting information here. So let's, well, wait, I guess this could, I don't know if this refers to all of John though, so let's see this real quick. Let's see if there's any other references to John before we move on. See, little significance seems to exist in the following story that Jesus had come from the mount, other than the fact that he already been close to the temple when he returns there and encounters the scribes and Pharisees. So that is interesting, worth bringing up here, and I guess I should have read that a little bit louder. But they bring up the fact that where it says each of them went home while Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. And yet little significance seems to exist in the following story that Jesus had come from the mount, other than the fact that he would have already been close to the temple when he returns there and encounters the scribes, Pharisee, and the woman. That's interesting. So let's take a look back over here. See if we can finally get this thing to load. Nope. It's no better. So let's ignore that for a second. And let's move back here. It's not featured outside of Jesus' visit. Well, I think that might be incorrect way to put it. It is rarely featured outside Jesus' visit to Jerusalem right before his death. Now let's see if we can pull a couple verses for that. Every day he was teaching in the temple. Let me see this real quick, because I think that is one of the candidates for, let me see, for a spot to put the passage we were studying in. Okay, let's back it up. We're not making much progress at all, so let's not get stuck. So honestly, I think this is good as is. So it is rarely featured outside of Jesus' visit to Jerusalem right before his death. And John doesn't highlight the Mount of Olives outside of this passage. And I think one more thing worth noting is that, so let's write this down. The Mount of Olives. So there's little Wait, what happened to my text? Significance in this passage. And yeah, the inclusion, actually let me make this larger for all you guys. The inclusion of such details is characteristic of John. I think that is important. So I find John to be fairly efficient on details like that. So let me figure out what's going on with my... Now even this is freezing up. Oh boy. Yeah, I think that's the one I used. That's a theme. Oh boy. That's going to be interesting. Another loading beach ball. Well, while I'm at it, might as well shamelessly plug some of my videos. Recently, I made my Holy, Holy, Holy Hymn video. You guys don't know how long that thing has been in the works. It has been way too long. I think more than a year at this point. I've written it. I mean, it's just been in production, like even just in the editing, for about a year now. The script has probably been around for even longer. Oh boy, I messed it up. This is not the theme I want. Boy, oh boy, what did I do? Can I undo that? Yes, I can. Now it's going to be even worse of a loading time. So let's keep on chatting. And then after that, I also created what I like to call a little bit of a follow-up video. I ended up calling it Hymn Review, where essentially I reviewed a couple song versions of Holy, Holy, Holy. And they're both pretty good. So check that out. Those are the latest videos. Also, be sure to subscribe. You're most likely watching this on the replay, so feel free to press the pause button. Well, you don't need to pause it. Feel free to press the subscribe button right now if you're enjoying this video, or check out a couple more videos and then subscribe. Just make sure you subscribe at some point in the near future. Oh, great. More loading. I will try to make this as interesting as possible, but these loading screens are really making that hard. Let me mention. Spell that right. All right. Yeah, that's good. I think that's the best we can get out of this. I think we could talk about 53 a little more, but I just don't really know what it would add to the conversation. They each went to their own house, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. I think that'd just be a bit of a nitpicky thing to go into 53. Now let's take a look at verse 2. I find this quite interesting. Again, early in the morning, he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. So this is interesting. This already indicates up here that they didn't go to their own homes, meaning outside of Jerusalem. So it's probably referring to, I don't know, possibly the Pharisees. That could make sense. So if we look at that in context. Okay. And that is not where I want to be. That's taking a decade to load. Here we go. So I found this very interesting, though. Okay. There we go. Come on. Okay. Here we... My computer is teasing me right now. Come on. What? What is going on? Oh, my goodness. What did I do? Okay, let's close that. Okay. We're back in business. Okay, let's take a look at this verse reference here. Early in the morning, all the people came to him in the temple. So let's take a look at a couple things here. First, let's see what they mean here. Early in the morning. Oh, that's all one word. And that word is, it's using my new lexicon. Oh boy, here we go. Wait, let me see this. Is this one a... This one does not have a pronunciation help here, so that's unfortunate. But I think it's, C. Hoth, hop, these, I don't know. It helps though, the pronunciation, especially with those. Let's see, where is... there we go. Oh, that's row. I kind of forgot what that one was. So orthos, same as dawn, morning, early morning. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's take a look at this real quick. What does this say about... Oh, come on. We don't want this. We want a different word. Really don't get how to get this thing to load. Oh, no, I think I do know how. Highlight the word. Should come through. And it's not. Technical issues, the game. Okay. We're just going to touch on the fact that here, early in the morning, is very uncharacteristic and doesn't really occur elsewhere. Which again just does not really appear in line with a lot of what John says. Come on. I'm forgetting something. This is something I like to do. I like to summarize what the verse is saying plainly. So I'm going to do this here. But then yet again, it is hard to summarize exactly what this passage means. Thought I tried to disturb. There we go. We will no longer be disturbed. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to guess. What do they mean by they? Who is they? It could be the disciples, could be the Pharisees, could just be the general people around. And that is an interesting question. I'm curious. I doubt this would provide any additional information to see what this means by they. But I might as well check. Wait. Is this really... Let me open my interlinear. Okay, no, that's not the word. It's still loading. Ay. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I could try and set up another computer just for streaming, and then Honestly, though, even when I'm not streaming, logo still isn't that smooth. Travel, yeah, that is. Oh, it is. They went, they traveled, departed. Hmm. So they departed, they left, they traveled, they went to their own house. But Jesus came to him, he sat down and taught them. Now, the question truly is here we go, now it's loading. Does this occur in John elsewhere? And while this is not, again, a very hard way of putting this does not occur elsewhere. Not in this way. I'm sure there are other unique words and phrases that John only uses once, but something like early in the morning is, I think, out of character here, especially when other gospel writers do use it, like Luke here. Come on. Which is early in the morning, all the people. Wait, that's exactly from Luke. Well, it's pretty much. Came to him in the temple. Now, this is came to him again. So then it really does look like it could refer to the earlier part, but I think it is certainly not. So let's not get bogged down. We're getting slowed down in these first few verses. Let's just make note. So let's first just summarize the first two verses. Yeah, I'll just put that in there. Let's see, they it's home, and Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. It is hard to determine who this. Wait, that is not how you spell that. I know at least that much spelling. Okay, there we go. It's hard to determine who they is. So that is worth mentioning. That is unclear whether it's referring to the Pharisees, because if you look at the previous verse, if we do that right now, last thing they talked about was, are you from Galilee? To search and see, no prophet arises from Galilee. They each went to his own house, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. I mean, it could work. Honestly, it could. I can understand why people for centuries have considered this a part of the Gospel of John. It just takes a little careful examination. Let me see this one last time, see if we can get this. So let me take a look. Come on. There we go. I'm trying to find, here we go, files versions. Not the manuscripts. I'm trying to find where it's discussing the language. Looking for point 3. Where's point 3? No, it says John 3, not point 3. 2, 4. Is this 3? Oh. Oh, this looks to be an error. Oh, okay, yeah, there's an error by one of the. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna have to report that. Let's see, how do I do that? I think there's a way to do that. I'll have to figure that out. Evidence to the same effect is derived from the language, which in many instances is not Johannine. The expressions of. Here we go. Paz, ho, Laos, Katsa. Okay. I'm not going to try and impress right now. And let's just read what that is. Early in the morning, he came into the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. And then verse 3, where the scribes and Pharisees brought women who'd been caught in adultery, placed him in the midst. Are more in conformity with the. Okay. I need to look this up. I'm not a scholar, so I'm uncertain of what that term means. So I'm actually just gonna use my friend Google. I already tried putting in the dictionary, that didn't work. I'm gonna use my friend Google here. And let me take a look where. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, here we go. Let's figure out Herman. Usage in speaking. Well, you could have just said that. Usa Lequendi. Usa Lequendi. Usa Lequendi. So the way of speaking of the synoptic gospels. While the entire complexion language, particularly the incessant de, is quite contrary to the style of our evangelists. Basically, he's making 2 points here. A, the style resembles the synoptic gospels more than that of John. At the same time, it is uncharacteristic of John. That makes a lot of sense. And something I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago to my Bible study. John is a very unique book as a gospel and very unique in many different ways.